If you haven't heard the latest controversy about NaNoWriMo, I'll be sharing it in this video, along with tips on how to write a novel in 30 days, whether you decide to participate in NaNoWriMo or not. So firstly, I don't want to dwell on the controversy for too long, or if you already know what's been happening recently with NaNoWriMo, you can actually just skip ahead to my tips in the next chapter of this video. But basically, NaNoWriMo recently put out a statement about the use of generative AI in writing. Originally, NaNoWriMo stated that it can be a useful and supportive tool for those who are disabled or who would not otherwise have access to writing tools for financial or other reasons. But there was a big backlash against this in the writing community, and whilst I'm also all for making writing more accessible to everyone, AI ultimately is based on other people's work, our work as writers, and many writers like me agree that NaNoWriMo's approach was not the right way to go about things. Later, it partly backed down and said that they acknowledged there were bad actors in the AI space, but they find the categorical condemnation for AI to be problematic. So a lot of writers won't be taking part in NaNoWriMo this year because that statement still sounds like NaNoWriMo are broadly fine with the use of AI in a number of circumstances. However, if you decide not to take part, there's still nothing stopping you doing the challenge anyway, as it's a great way to boost your word count. So now we've got that out of the way, let's move on to my tips for writing a novel in 30 days, whatever the month, and whether you're taking part in NaNoWriMo or not, based on all the things that I've learned about writing a novel faster alongside a day job and working to publisher deadlines. So officially, NaNoWriMo was based on a total word count of 50,000 words or more, but it's really up to you as to what you think is achievable within a month. And as it's basically a challenge, I'd suggest being as ambitious as you possibly can. Even if you're not naturally a planner for your novels and you're actually a pantser, so someone who doesn't plan ahead but just writes, I'd suggest at least having a rough idea of where you're trying to actually head to. So it might be helpful to know how you're going to end the novel, for example, so that you have some direction in your writing. If you are a planner, then of course you're going to do this naturally, and then you could think about your characters, your plot lines, and your key settings, perhaps even do some of the research in advance so that when it actually comes to November or whatever month you decide to start, you can just focus on getting your words down. Whatever your total word count for your novel, I do recommend writing down the number of words you want to write each day, because there's actually science behind why this makes you more likely to achieve your word count. So, a study in Psychology Today actually showed that people who wrote down their goals were 42% more likely to achieve them. And you can track those in a notebook, Excel sheet, Scrivener, a goal app, or wherever. But the main thing is that it's written down. So work out your word count goals, write them down, and then track them through the month. This next tip is also science-based, and it's a way of sticking to habits. So various people, including James Clear in his book Atomic Habits, talks about how to stack habits together to make you more likely to achieve your goals. So how does this actually work? So you need to link one habit with another. So let's say you have something you do every day, like waking up and making coffee. If you know you have some time before work to write, you could try leaving your laptop near your coffee machine or your kettle the night before, so that in the morning you start associating making a coffee with writing and it actually becomes easier to do. This next tip is something that I see a lot of writers do, and if you are able to get a handle on it, it might actually help you get more writing done. It also helped me write my debut and second novels. So it's tempting to have writing rituals or places you absolutely have to write, like a particular room or a desk. But the more you create specific writing rituals and rules around when you can write and how you'll write, the more difficult it actually becomes to write. I actually wrote most of my first draft into a smartphone on my morning commute, as well as places like libraries, coffee shops, the dining table, and sometimes, yes, a desk, but usually anywhere and everywhere. So freeing yourself up means that you learn to write however and whenever you can. This next tip is something that impacts every single writer I've ever spoken to, but it's good to know what it is so that we can work on avoiding it. Procrastination. Now, I do think, and hear me out on this, that procrastination actually does have a positive effect. So I try to see it as our brain's way of processing the next steps in our writing when we're not quite ready to move on. But if you do want to move faster with your writing, that's not really helpful. So the things that work for me include using productivity apps. So when I first started writing my novel, I used something called the Freedom app on my phone, which basically stops access and notifications to all unnecessary apps on smartphones. Nowadays, both iPhone and Android have these built in. So for Apple users, there's something called the app limit feature, and on Android, it's called digital wellbeing. You can also try unplugging your laptop or your computer from the internet entirely. And before I move on to my next tip, don't forget that I regularly post videos about writing and book marketing based on my 20 years of marketing experience. So hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more. My next tip is well known in the productivity space, but I don't actually hear many writers talking about it. Science shows that removing anything that requires extra mental energy will make you more productive. If you're spending time every single day just thinking about when you're going to fit writing into your day, that's energy you could be using for writing. So instead, try time blocking. Now, time blocking is basically just a way of phasing out different types of activity into your calendar so that you have a specific time, day, or both which you actually allocate to writing. So if your available time changes every day or week, then time blocking helps you stay organized and holds that time in your calendar. On the other hand, if there's always a specific time you have free, but it usually ends up being booked up with other things, then time blocking that time out in your calendar for writing keeps it safe and protects it. Now, this tip was a game changer for me. It's called Parkinson's Law, and once I understood how it works, I was actually able to write faster. So basically, it's the idea that work expands to fill the time that you've allocated for it. So let's say you've got half a day to write. So sometimes we'll find ourselves just stretching out that time and only writing one or two scenes. But actually, if you gave yourself a shorter time frame and a deadline for completing something, you can get more done. And it also conserves more mental energy, which was obviously something I was talking about earlier. So, how do you actually do that? One thing that helped me and my friends is writing sprints. So, you give yourself a set amount of time and you will write as much as you can in that time. We use something called the Pomodoro method or technique. It's based on having a fixed amount of time, 25 minutes, to complete a particular task. And 25 minutes already feels far less daunting. It gives you a fixed and specific amount of time to finish and it gets you into flow state, which actually brings me on to the next tip. Have you ever got so engrossed in your writing that an hour's gone past and you haven't even noticed? Or you just find yourself really enjoying a scene and the words were almost writing themselves? That's what's known as flow state. So, where someone is totally focused on a task and activity mentally. Scientifically, it's been shown to increase productivity, but also actually improves mental well-being as a bonus. By using 25 minutes of time bursts like the Pomodoro technique, you're giving yourself more of a chance to quickly get into that flow state because you're basically encouraging greater focus on the task, which makes writing easier and quicker. And if you're going to be doing your 30-day novel challenge while juggling a day job, you might find this video on how I wrote my novel alongside a day job helpful. See you in the next one, and thanks for watching.